Hi, and thank you for joining us for this episode of The State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. That is Robert Hilliard. I am Whitney Wiley, and we are here on Thursdays talking all things leadership. I almost said real estate for some reason. I don't know.
That's your other life.
Leadership. And today we are going to be tackling the topic of L&D, learning and development in your company. And this was sparked by an article that I read that talked about how there was this divide between what executives expect and are looking for in L&D and what employees are looking for, which isn't all that surprising. We've got so much divide on the way leadership and employees are seeing lots of things in the workplaces right now. And so we're going to talk about this article, what some of the challenges are and solutions to improving your L&D. And of course, if there's anything that we can do to help you in that regard, we would encourage you to reach out to one or both of us. So, Robert, your opening thoughts on this?
Opening thoughts are that I am not surprised by anything in the article because leaders have been saying basically what is in this article for generations. So I'll talk more about that as we get into it.
All right. So the article, and then there are actually two. So one is, I guess the best way to put it is a summary of, I think, a piece that was done on CNBC. I didn't watch the video, but I did read the article, and it's titled 84% of employees expect this job perk, but most executive thinks it's a waste of time. And then within that was a link to another article that is a white paper, summary of a white paper done by edX Enterprise. And it says that 1,600 executives and professionals were surveyed about their expectations for learning and development on the job. And it goes into a little more detail about what the disparities are between what executives are looking for and what employees are looking for. And when you start from this place that an extremely important component of what is happening in the workplace, you've got divergent views about how or why, or even if it should be happening, you've got a real challenge, right? Because part of being a team, right, and we talked about this last week, the part of being a team is being on the same page, is moving in the same direction, is having this shared vision, shared goals that you are working towards. And if, half of your organization is thinking that, L&D should be happening, and here's the most important reason why it should be happening, and the other half, or 80-20 or whatever the percentage of leadership to employees are on a whole different page, how can you be moving in the same direction?
Right. And I think that it boils down to what I think a lot of leaders think the task of their team members or their followers are. And I made a joke about this kind of when we started talking about this topic, that the mentality is like a feudal lord, where the folks that work for them are the serfs, the followers, and that why would you train your followers or your serfs in things that are going to move them away from the job that makes you rich, that makes the the fiefdom rich. It doesn't make sense for a lot of these leaders to do that. I think, even though they wouldn't consciously say that, and I know we talked about, the leaders that say the silent part out loud. So they're not going to consciously think that. And many leaders probably don't even think that that's what's going on. But on the surface, that's what it looks like.
Right.
They only want people to do things that are going to benefit the task that they feel is their quote unquote real job. So why would somebody who is not in a managerial position be trained in managerial or leadership things like that? Because it's not part of their job at the moment.
Well, and that's the important part of the way I see it, both of the articles. And it's not just about what's happening now, it's what's happening in the near future, right? And the projections are that by 2030, automation, it might displace hundreds of millions of jobs globally. And this requires that employees have new skills. And the days of people coming in and doing the same thing over and over again for decades is gone, and technology is changing so rapidly, and now we have AI that is a part of what's going on. If employees are not trained, right, if they don't have upskilling and are part of where technology is going, then the work doesn't get done, which is a huge part of a manager's job, certainly, right, is making sure that the work gets done. And all of the jobs are, while millions and millions of jobs will be replaced, right, employees will be replaced, not all of them will. And there's going to be a place for human endeavors, even with the replacement of some of the jobs. Someone has to tell AI what to do, right? So if we are not keeping up with making sure that employees are continuously improving their skills and abilities, there's a problem. But what I see sort of happening here is that, and I'll share some of the statistics. The divide is that 84% of employees expect their employer to provide the training, right? And half of C-suite executives view this effort as a waste of time. And the question is, is it a waste of time, or is it, as you said, Robert, just sort of this mindset that they have about keeping things sort of the way they are, sticking with the status quo, recognizing that the status quo cannot happen, right? That change is constantly happening. And if you're not investing in your talent, what do you think ultimately is going to happen?
Right, and there's a lot of things to unpack here. I think the first thing, and I always go to strategy, and you should be thinking strategically as a leader. And so, if you're thinking strategically as a leader, and you're looking at the environment, and you're keeping up with what's going on, you shouldn't be caught that off guard by things. That's one thing. So it doesn't always surprise me, but it sometimes surprises me when things that you and I see as obvious, people don't see. It's like, well, if you're paying attention, there are signs and there are symptoms in the system that should let you know that you're not going to be able to predict it 100%, but it gives you an idea about what might be coming down the pike. And a lot of people we saw it with the pandemic, when there was evidence that there was certainly going to be something coming down the pike, and you should be thinking about it. And I made a joke, I think years ago, about me coming into a job and saying, so what's your disaster recovery plan? And they're like, we don't have one. I'm like, are you kidding me? But you have to be thinking strategically about things, because
We actually did a training on that, didn't we?
absolutely, absolutely. When things are changing all the time, and you have to be looking at that. Don't get so caught up in what's going on right in front of you that you're not taking the time to think strategically. That's the first part. The other thing is getting caught up in AI. The projection is that there are going to be many people losing their job, but these are projections. That doesn't mean that everybody's going to lose their job, or it could be more, it could be less than the projections are. But at least if you're prepared for it, you can start moving in a direction that could benefit your workforce and yourself. Of course, those things are bets. It's nothing is guaranteed because we don't have a crystal ball. But those two things really come to mind when I hear about things like that. The other thing, and I'm sure we're going to talk about what to do, is, well, when I read this one line in the article, and it said that executives think that their existing L&D programs, existing L&D programs are a waste of time. Well, that's your fault.
Yes.
They exist that way because you have them in place that way. But the other part of that was, then I thought, well, we'll find out why.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm with you on that. If you think it's a waste of time, why? What are you doing, and why are you doing it? And often what's happening, and there are lots of different reasons, right? But a lot of what I see is that there is not a connection between the training that's done, the development that's done, to either the strategic plan. I know you're huge on strategy, or the work that the employees are currently doing, or where, and this ties into the strategic plan, where the organization is going, right? And so the other part of that is they don't think that the current, and there's so many contradictions in the numbers for me. So they think that the existing plan isn't working, yet they believe that employees are satisfied with the program that they have, right? Which is out of alignment with where employees are about whether or not they're satisfied with the plans that they have. And I think part of this is less about what is being done than the mindset and the mentality around why they're doing it. And when you look at, I don't know if you looked at the second article. I didn't send the second article. It was a link in the first article, and it goes through some different aspects of the study that was done. And it said that L&D programs, according to executives, should be pretty much about upskilling, right? And driving performance. But that's not how employees see it. Employees see it as an opportunity for them to challenge themselves, to learn new things, and that what L&D really has the opportunity to do for a company as far as employees are concerned is provide opportunity for, yes, performance enhancement, but recruitment and retention, and the engagement issue that a lot of companies have, right? And so if they could get on the same page about why they're doing what they're doing, asking the question that you suggest about why it's not working, then they can make whatever tweaks are necessary to actually make it a program that works both for the organization and the employees.
Yeah. So I skimmed the second article, and I went through it, and I was like, oh yeah, I know this stuff. This doesn't surprise me. But But to your point, why does one thing have to exclude the other? That can be a marriage of both things, and but I know that there are many leaders, they like to think in binary terms. They're very busy people, they have a lot going on, they see things, they want to make quick decisions. Sometimes you have to slow down, and instead of making the quick decision, you need to make the right decision. And sometimes the right decision may not jive with what your philosophy is in the moment. You need to stretch yourself and think outside of your normal way of doing, out of your comfort zone. And then you can track to see if it's yielding what you want it to yield. And again, have those conversations with your team members, the people that follow you, to make sure that you're on the same page and you're satisfying their needs too. I don't understand why it has to be one or the other. That doesn't make sense to me.
And it doesn't. And so all of these things can coexist. There's a fear, right? You talked about mindset, and you talked about sort of that feudal mindset. And that mindset is grounded in a fear that when employees get trained, if we invest in them and they get trained, that they're going to leave. Right? They will leave. They will take these new tools, these skills, this knowledge, and then someone else will benefit from it. And the reality is that is very low on the totem pole of employee thinking. And in fact, the opposite is true. You're not investing in them is what's driving them away, right? And it's driving the disengagement, not you're investing in them. And so that becomes part of the disconnect about what's going on. If you are saying, well, we're not going to make certain kinds of investments, we're not going to allow you to go to certain kinds of training, or one of the things that the study showed, the white paper in the edX Enterprise article, is that and there's not only a divide between leadership and employees, there's a divide in the generations about what they see as important and what kinds of development opportunities they think will work best for them. So primarily between Gen X and the millennials, right? That there's this divide between how they want to be developed. And I can only imagine it doesn't address the other generations in the workplace, right? Baby boomers and the one that comes after them. Y, I guess. And so, or is Y and millennials the same thing?
Why millennials the same thing? So
I can't ever remember.
Baby boomers, Gen X, and then
the Gen X. Yeah. The Gen X. Yeah. Boomers, Gen X is different, right? It's not addressed in the article, but I'm imagining it's different. Although I'm a boomer technically. I think you would be a Gen X.
Yeah, it depends on who
and we're in alignment with each other, and quite frankly, what's coming across as Gen Z. So which is, I think, born of a recognition of what it is we all want. We want to feel valued. We want to feel appreciated. We all want to learn and grow. The method in which that happens, for me, I don't think is as big a deal as we make it out to be. If we would get to the core of what we have in common, right? Our basic human needs, our basic needs as employees, and then let the methodology that gets us there, let that be what it's going to be. but recognize where we're all in alignment.
I agree, and this is that, like I said, that second article was no surprise to me. This has been, first of all, there have been decades of research that has gone into this whole notion that if you train people, they will stay. And so that's been proven for decades. But people still, like I said, people are slow to change, and people have these old school, old timey, however you want to put it, ideas in their head about management. And why would you want to train people when you're using the old method that we've talked about for years in this program, that you're looking for somebody who's good at their current job and that's going to be your leader of the future? You don't need to train anybody if that's what you're thinking. But they, on the same token, you get that person and you bring that person into their new job, you promote that person, and they start having all these people issues because they don't know how to lead. They know how to manage and they know how to work in their old job. You're not preparing them for their new job. But I think a lot of leaders are not, I don't want to say a lot. I think some leaders don't want to admit when that type of promotion is a mistake. I've worked with a lot of those leaders. Whenever they made a mistake, it was like it didn't happen. And you're like, it happened. Like it didn't happen. And if you pointed it out, what they did was they punished you. So it created this culture where the leader was an all-powerful God who would make these promotion type decisions, and you couldn't say anything. If that was the person that they wanted for the job, you couldn't say anything to them about it, and it caused a lot of problems.
No, yeah.
It's like, it is what it is. I mean, that's just how a lot. I mean, why do you need to train people if that's going to be the way you promote people? You don't need to train them.
So here's the thing, though, and this is a part of a training that I deliver. So there's a 5-part training that I'm a part of. I teach day 3 of this training. It's about strategic management and leadership and HR issues, right? And this notion that, again, going to your point, that it's like either one or the other. There are engagement issues that are real and detrimental to your business. And the unwillingness to invest and develop employees, whether you are preparing them for or think you're preparing them for management, supervisorial, leadership positions or not, the employees that you have that are disengaged, and the numbers say somewhere, depending on the study, anywhere from 1/3 to 1/2 or more of employees are disengaged at any particular time. That you're thinking that disengaged employees' interactions with your clients, your customers, or your constituents is in any way beneficial to the bottom line of your business is simply misguided, right? And so I would not want in my business, I don't want disengaged employees or contractors or whatever, members of my team. I don't want them disengaged and then having conversations. Disengaged people show up, they have bad attitudes, they are rude, and they can turn off the very people, right? That portion of the market that is responsible for your revenue or providing, valuable referrals for your business, or not saying horrible things about you on Yelp or whatever, right? And so thinking outside of just who may someday potentially possibly end up right in a role that's going to be an overseer of others. I don't know, it's just to me it's short-sighted.
Yeah, it's well, I think oh, I'm trying to say this. So many things popped into my head when you were talking about that. I'm trying to find the most relevant one. And I think one that comes into mind is the fact that when you talked about you said revenue. I like to think of it as returns, right? So revenue.
Returns.
I think what happens a lot of times, and I don't have any empirical evidence of this, but this is what I've seen in my career working with a lot of folks. When businesses are doing well, there is this. That's when it's been my experience. The status quo kicks in. It's like we're doing well. Let's keep doing what we're doing, and we may have disengaged employees, but we're profits are good, returns are good, revenue's good, however you want to look at it. So let's not upset the apple cart. When if they took care of the engagement issue, they wouldn't just have good revenue, they would have extraordinary revenue. But it's that fear of, well, I don't want to, if it's not broke, don't fix it type of attitude.
But
That
disengagement is broke.
but when you can ignore things, like I said.
So if I hear you correctly, then you're saying that disengagement may be a part of the of what's going on, but because profits are such, the bottom line is such, maybe shareholders are happy as such, then it's a cost of doing business and we'll just allow that to be here.
That could be one way of thinking it,
Okay.
or with that disengagement that someone told me about doesn't exist because look at returns. It provides
Okay.
it
Yeah.
provides the fuel for their delusion, and I've seen leaders do this. And I remember back in a job that I had, we were talking about service that one department gave to many of the employees, a lot of the employees that work there. And I remember the CEO saying, well, I don't have that problem when I go there. And I'm like, of course you don't. You're the CEO. Who in their right mind would give you poor service? But it was that thinking that, well, I'm surprised. I'm surprised. I think the phrase was, I'm surprised that people are complaining about them because I never had that experience. And I was like, what? I didn't say anything in the meeting, but I was like, after the meeting was over, I spoke to my boss, who reported directly to the CEO, and I said, "Can you think you should probably point out to this person that you'd have to be a pretty sick individual, or be on, you're trying to ruin your career to give the CEO of the company you work for bad service. Of course you're not going to." So, which is why a lot of organizations do secret shopping and all this other stuff where people don't know, they can have that outside observer look at the service and report back to the organization. But this person was, I don't see it. And I was like, wow, of course you don't see it.
Well, uh, I guess I would like to encourage though the decision makers in organizations to take a step back, a broader look, and to not fall into the trap that you have outlined about where your bottom line is, and that it, if it's sufficient, if it's good, right, that should be the end all be all of it, and not think that because that's working for you that nothing's broken and therefore there's nothing to fix. And look at this as more of an opportunity. If you are of the opinion that L&D is an unnecessary component, or that the L&D that you have currently going, if you have one at all, is not working, right? If that's not working, and therefore, why are we even doing this? I would like for you to have a conversation with your HR, with the managers who are experiencing turnover, and HR, and the challenges that are happening in your workplace, even if it's just for a time such as this, right? And that the market is going to shift and be more of a, an employer's market, rather than where we are, where it's sort of leaning in the other direction. That you look at this in a different light, right? To try looking at this in a different light, and understand that, as Robert has talked about, and the pandemic was great evidence of this, there are always threats, right? Some of them more obvious than others that are on the horizon. And some of those threats are your competitors. They may be direct competitors. They may simply be competitors for talent, right? They're not necessarily in your industry. So it's not a marketplace competitor, but a competitor for talent. And as everyone, certainly in the training that I'm doing, the coaching, consulting, everyone is talking about the challenges that they are having finding talent, people to come in and do the work, to move your organization forward, doing the work, the serving the mission of your organization. Or they can hire them, but you're not retaining them, you're not keeping them. So my encouragement is have those conversations with HR and your managers about the turnover that's happening, the disengagement that's preceding their turnover in many cases, the disconnect about what employees want and what it is that you guys are offering, and seeing if there is not an opportunity there for you to just try something different, right? To see if, even if profits are good, which is right. I don't want to watch what I say. Even if profits are good, because part of what's being conveyed in the media and in the marketplace is that the problem is that workers are not productive. They are coming in and they're wanting too much, right? Not being productive, yet and still your profits are good. And so if your profits can be good in the current environment, think of what they could be if you made some tweaks, if you made some shifts in mindset and in implementation.
You, as always, you touched on a lot of things, and you talked
One of
about.
these days, I'm going to work on that.
Well, no, I love it because it gives me a menu of options. But when I talk, I try not to stray too far from the topic at hand. But I will say this: you talked about the pandemic and the training that we did back in the day, and I think we started out that training by talking about the system. And we put up this graphic of a spider web. You think of the system as a spider web with these lines, and some of them are vertical and some of them horizontal. And something that happens way on the other end of that spider web, you're toward the end of it here, that vibration, that's the system. And it may take a while for it to get to you. A lot of times people forget that the system, the economic system that you're in, the global system that you're in, especially if it's global economics, right? We're all tethered together. It's very sneaky. And things that don't happen directly in your industry can have an impact on your industry. And you need to be paying attention to that. That's one thing. The other thing is getting back to the topic at hand. This is, I'm sorry, there's obviously some, okay. Um,
As long as it's not your house.
it may be, I don't know what's going on downstairs. I'm joking. But the thing about learning and development, and this has been something that I was told when I first got into the field, was that when times get tough, learning and development is the first department that goes, because it seems a luxury, not as a necessity. And I hearken back to, see what I did there, use it an old timey, hearken back to my original statement. When you don't need people to do more than their jobs, why would you have learning and development? You only want them to learn their little corner. And I think that is a mistake that a lot of leaders make. Getting out of that mindset will make them more profitable. It will make them happier. They'll have more engagement. It'll make their workforce happier. And the other thing to remember, because change happens so slowly, a lot of these leaders don't see the negativity that occurs in their tenure while they're there. So if they don't see it happening, why should they be concerned about it? But just do a Google search and look at who the major companies were 20 years ago, and you'll probably be shocked because a lot of those players are no longer on the board anymore. So just something to keep in mind.
No, you're absolutely right. And be open. Just be open to the possibility that there's another way, that you can continue to get the outcomes that you want or better. And right, make sure that you're not one of the companies that goes the way of the dodo. Right? They're happier, they're engaged. But here's the thing, and this is the piece about change. And while the mindset shifts and sort of the evolution of management may be slow to change, what's happening in the marketplace is not so slow, right? The technology is not so slow. There are other things happening that are rapidly happening, and there are going to be challenges or threats that come on you that you don't see. And the inability to have in your workforce employees who are creative and innovative and adaptable, flexible, and can pivot to help you shift your whatever you're selling, right? Whatever problem you're solving. Employees that are flexible, adaptable, innovative, creative are going to help you to make those shifts in a way that a stagnant, disengaged workforce could never do. So while right now, in this moment, things may be good, right? Think back 3.5 years ago, right? Almost 4 years ago. And having to shift on a dime, right? One day, one Wednesday, everything was good. And then, the NBA decides they're not playing anymore. That's the visual that I have, right? It's like there were people playing basketball, and then they were, and then the world shut down. That's the visual that I have in my head. So it, it can happen just like that, right? So yes, maybe in the moment it's all good, but your role as a leader is to play the long game. Your role is to your job is to play the long game. And if you don't take advantage of the opportunities that you have to develop your employees now for that long game, as you can, because time is not stopping, right? As you continue marching towards the long game, they're no longer going to be, or the skills that they have are no longer going to be relevant. And at the time that you decide, oh, it's now's the time to have them with the upskilling and reskilling and all of that, they're not with you anymore. They've gone and went on to work for somebody else who was willing to invest in them. And so the challenge is to be open, which is another part of your role as a leader, is to be open and to look at the challenges on the horizon and develop a strategy that's going to help you to address those. And you don't wait until the problem is squarely in front of you. You're supposed to be anticipatory, right? Otherwise, why you? Why
Yeah.
you? If you're not going to do and see things differently than others, then why you?
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head, and I want to amend something I said on the macro level. Like things are happening really fast, but in your little environment, your micro level, your organization, things will be changing very slowly because you're not reacting to those fast changes that are happening. You should be looking at those, and a lot of people don't. They get caught there in that little time bubble,
Yeah,
and they get stuck in there, and they think, well, that's affecting this industry over here or that organization over there. It's not going to happen to, oh, what happened? It's happening to us. They get caught off guard because they're not paying attention or they're stuck in their mindset. You're absolutely right. You need to be open to change, which is not easy to do. We say it all the time. It's simple, but it's not easy. We say it all the time
but
because
you can get help with that.
we can get help with that. Right. Absolutely. We're here. We're here to help you. But change is difficult.
Yes,
Especially when what you're doing is apparently, seemingly, I should say, working for you. It will not always work for you. In many cases, it will not. Again, and you said it so very well, it's like what's best for the organization. A lot of times people, they think they're doing what's best for the organization because it appears to be best for them and they represent the organization, but it will not be best for the organization in the long term. Again, go Google some of those top players that were around 20 years ago. Some of them are still around, many of them are not. And a lot of the times, I remember when we were in school, I remember we were reading these books on strategy. And one of the cases was this company called DEC. They were a computer company. They were like this huge computer company. And I was like, who are they? But they were like the big mover and shaker of, and they refused to do personal computers.
yeah,
They thought computers were just going to be for engineers and programmers, and they did not want to make that shift, and it was their undoing. By the time they tried, it was too late. And now I probably I dare to say that maybe one or two people watching the show will be like, oh yeah, I heard about them, but probably not.
right.
And that's a scary thought for any organization. It should be scary.
Right. And the other part of that, some other companies, right? You don't remember DC, but do you remember Kodak?
Oh, I do.
Right? A refusal to see the shift in the market towards digital,
Digital. Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
I don't, the typewriter
Oh
people.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Um, I want to say Smith and Wesson, but that's a whole other industry altogether.
That's no. That's we don't talk about that.
That's a different industry. But
I,
Smith
Smith
Corona,
Corona. Smith
Smith
Corona.
Corona,
Yeah.
right? And you need to, who's going to have a computer, right? What's wrong with the typewriter? All so those shifts happen, and without people who are innovative in their thinking, right, you're going to lose out on those opportunities. And so we could say, right, that change happens, and that's part of evolution, and companies come and go. True. But you didn't create your company as an entrepreneur, or you didn't join your company to run it as a CEO wanting to run it into the ground. I could be wrong, but I don't think most people do that. So the alternative is just to be open, right, to explore. And so I want to end our time talking about what do you do next? Where do you go next? And to sort of bridge this gap between the current thinking on the leadership side and employee thinking is maybe to start with a collaborative effort, right? To have the L&D, HR, particularly if those are separate, the business units, the employees in your organization get together, the co-ownership, and have co-ownership and collaboration about what it is you're doing, right? And that collaboration involves the systematic capabilities assessment. And it's like figuring out, what do we have currently, right? What are the skills and the abilities, the knowledge that we currently have, and what do we need moving into the future? Right? Where are we going? What is it? Looking at our strategic plan, where are we going, and what are we going to need, and how can we make sure that we are developing the workforce of the future, right? You're looking at the future of work. How are you making sure that you are moving in that direction? But not solely from the mindset of the skills gap, right? And understanding what this means in a psychic capacity for your employees, right? In terms of, yes, this is about you having the skills of the future, but this is about you continuing to learn and grow. That's one of our needs as human beings, is to continue to learn and grow. And so being willing to make those investments, and then looking at how you're doing that so that it's not one-offs, right? These are not irrelevant trainings. They're trainings that are relevant for the job that they're doing, the jobs that they're going to be doing, and then making sure that you are reinforcing what they've learned by providing the opportunities to use that information, those skills, on an ongoing basis. And one of the things that I see that happens is, in some companies, I had one in class 2 weeks ago, and she said they have $300. There's a $300 budget for learning and development for their employees.
Wait.
$300 per employee.
Right. Okay. Which means that's probably one, yeah, one online class that they could take. that's maybe, and it's not even from a university or anything like that, or certification. It's probably, wow.
One, right? Which exactly, 1 3-hour class that you could take online. You certainly aren't sending them anywhere.
Right.
Right. And so, and is that something that's really going to help them now or in the future, or is that just for the sake of saying that we did it? And that's the piece that you have to be really careful about, that we've done it. And my gut feeling about the articles and this perception that the CEOs have that it's not working is that the mentality, right? The underlying mentality of this is that it's one more thing to check off. We've done it, regardless of whether or not ultimately what you're providing is something that matters to the employee and matters to your strategic ability to adapt and grow in the future.
Yeah,
So
I
I'll give you the final word on this.
my final word is your final word. I mean, you are eloquent in eloquent in articulating that. But it's like anything, you need to pay attention to what's going on. Pay attention to your workers. Pay attention to what's happening in the environment. Don't get hooked into the status quo, because change can happen. Like Whitney said, like you said, one day you're playing regular NBA games, and the next day no one's playing anywhere. The whole world is upside down, and you don't want to be caught off guard, especially when there are signs that things are changing or trending in a certain direction. So be prepared and talk to your people. And I want to say one more thing, because I remember, I've done L&D has been my entire career. That's been my career, and I remember working after getting a job and sitting down with my new boss and having a conversation about all the lofty goals he had for me as an instructional designer and facilitator and coach. Was wrap all those things together in my learning and development. And I was like, well, what is this a part of? Is this part of the strategic plan? Is this part of what learning and development goals the organization has? And this person looked at me dead in the face and said, no, we want to do them just to say we did them. And I said, I don't work like that. I don't work. And I know I've said this before on this program, but I'm saying it now because there are lots of people that think like that. It's a checkbox.
Yeah.
We did it. It's a checkbox. We're doing it. We're doing it. Whether it's to make themselves feel good or just to say they did it, but it doesn't work when you do it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there you go. So hopefully there is something that you can take away from this, right? Don't have it just be a checkbox, and it should be ongoing. It should be relevant. It should be repeated, reinforced, and authentically offered, with the expectation that you will engage your employees, right, for the now, and that's going to benefit you for the long game. So with that, we want to thank you for joining us for the State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond, here on Thursdays, 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. Robert, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, to work with you, or to talk with you about how we could help them in a consultative capacity, how would they get in touch with you?
They could reach me at inspireme@roberthilliardcoaching.com, or just go to roberthilliardcoaching.com and send me a message. I have a form you fill out. Tell me the types of challenges you're having, and we can set up a discussion where we can talk about how we can strategize to get you some momentum and help you reach your goals.
Awesome. And if you want to reach out to me, you can go to shiftingintoaction.now.site, shiftingintoaction.now.site. There is there as well a form for you to complete to schedule time with me to have an exploratory strategy session, and we can figure out how we can be of value to you and your organization, um, as an organization or individuals in your organization in a coaching capacity. So again, thank you. Thank you for participating, for listening. Thank you for the likes. And if there's anything we can do or a topic that we can cover, please drop us a line. Let us know. We look forward to seeing you next time. So take care.
Bye now.